Hi. Welcome to today's episode of Grounding Journey. I am so excited to have Tracy Ernst with me today, and she is the wonderful founder, creator of Essential Candies. And we are going to talk all about her journey through homeschooling and being a mom and starting her own business, and her husband supporting her through the inspiration and just an amazing conversation as we talk here about women entrepreneurs. I'm Chris Greer, host of the Grounding Journey podcast and creator of the My Happy Life monthly subscription box. The kind of conversations that you're going to find on this podcast are all about life's journeys. My guests and I will share how we've explored and expanded our life through lessons learned, mistakes, and mindful actions, and most importantly, how we celebrate the adventure. I'm glad you're here. Let's get started. So, Tracy is a wife of 24 years, a mom of two, an entrepreneur that has created a purposeful way of helping others. She's a longtime yoga and meditation practitioner and teacher for about 15 years. And I love this part. She recently registered for the Ironman 70.3 later this year. Like, you go, mama. I'm impressed.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, welcome, Tracy. I'm glad to be in conversation with you.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, so I've given kind of the little intro about you, and being a yoga and meditation practitioner, of course, has my heart because that's my grounding effects. And I love also that as we're recording today, you're out on your back deck. The sky is beautiful blue, the trees are behind you, so you are definitely bringing that grounded energy to today's conversation.
Yes, it's my happy place. One of my happy places for sure. Yeah.
Well, I've read your introduction. So tell me a little bit more about who your family, your kids, your friends, your business people, who they know you as.
Well, this is an interesting question. I think they would probably share she's hardworking, she's passionate, whatever she sets her mind to, she goes for it, without really having any fear behind it. Just she wants it, she goes for it. Um, and people will say that I'm positive, that I smile a lot. Um, yeah, and so it's kind of, yeah, I think that's how they would describe me. It's kind of an interesting question. So thank you for asking that.
It's one that definitely gets you a little stumped, and you have to think about, are you the person you want to be? Are you portraying the person who you think you
Yeah.
are? And
Yeah.
that's a really fun moment of reflection for everybody.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I want to talk about your journey, but as we talk about your journey, I also want to, because we're focusing on female entrepreneurs right now, I also want to introduce your company because I think that's a really important part of your journey. So,
Yes.
Essential Candies is, tell us, in 4 sentences, 5 sentences, whatever, what Essential Candies is.
So I would describe it as functional, purposeful, intentional, hard candies with slow dissolving that's infused with essential oils and other herbal plants. So each blend would be sort of designed and created to help support your body with whatever you might need a little extra help with. So, for example, our top seller is our digestive blend, and it has lemon, ginger, peppermint, and slippery elm, and it's all in one piece of hard candy. And so, having that slow dissolve into the mouth is what allows the plants to be quickly absorbed into the bloodstream, thereby relieving some nausea, some upset stomach, some indigestion, some motion, upset stomach, things like that. Yeah.
Well, and Digestive Blend was the second product of yours that I was introduced to. And we do carry quite a variety of them on the myhappylifebox.com website. My first one I was introduced was your Uplifting Blend. And
Mm,
that one was in one of our monthly subscription boxes. I think it was December 2023. But I love that one.
thank
And
you.
I will say that we're recording at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So I did have a Curb AM just a few minutes ago before we started, so I wouldn't be hungry on the call. And now the reason that
Thank
I
you.
found your products is I was looking for products to carry on our website and to have in our box. And I loved the story and the meaning behind your products. So, Essential Candies was founded because you had a friend going through a really rough time.
Yes. Actually, it was quite a um, very spiritual um, part of my journey that um, kind of has me jumping more forward than going back into more of my past. So I don't know, do you want me to start from the beginning, or do you want me just to talk about how Essential Candy was born?
Let's talk about how Essential Candy was born for a minute,
Okay.
and then we'll
Sure.
go from there.
Yeah, sounds good. So it's interesting when I'm asked how is Essential Candy born. I have the answer that I would give to individuals if I didn't know them or didn't know if I was in a safe space to share truly what happened, because not all individuals will understand the spiritual aspect to it. Some have even, had rolled their eyes or had some judgmental, undertones to their responses. So or they may think it's kind of woo-wooey. And, this is what truly happened for me. And I know that you've created this very safe space to create this podcast. And I know I can share, truly how this began.
Yes.
So I feel safe to go deeper here. So it was during the summer, a very dear friend, this was in 2018, a very dear friend of ours. He was my son's baseball coach. He was diagnosed with cancer in a different place in his body. And, after processing the news, I kept feeling like, what can I do to support this family? His children are the same ages as mine. And so I thought, I've got to be able to help our friend somehow. And so, I took to the meditation cushion. It's a very big part of my daily, routine, yoga and meditation. So I began to ask, how can I help our friend? And, many weeks passed and I still, was doing my thing, sitting on the cushion and trying to figure this out. Um, so I set out to do a bike ride. At the time, my average would be about 40 or 50 miles each time I would go. And I would ride probably about 3 or 4 times a week. Um, and so I usually would ride with a great friend of mine. And so she called last minute that day and said something came up. I was already in my cycling gear, and I was like, I'm not a big fan of changing multiple times. So I'm already ready. I got my water bottle filled. Let's go. Right. So I put my earbuds in and off I went with this goal of, at least completing 30 miles. So I chose this flat pathway with loops on either end. So it was just back and forth, back and forth. And so I was enjoying most of it. It was windy. I was nearly finished. And on the last part, the wind became so fierce. I started to have this moment of, I guess, complaining. I had
Mm.
this moment of going, "Oh my gosh, I can't really finish this. I'm going to end, and this is really tough." And I find sometimes in those moments that I'm put here to challenge myself. So I'm here to do something. Let's finish this. So I'm I just decided let's just keep going. So I finished that loop and I'm starting the next one. The wind is in my face. Um, I decided this is, gearing down was going to be, very important to do. And so I pushed through all of that mind chatter, that can occur when I'm doing something hard, like a lot of people, I'm sure,
Mhm.
and I remember this part so vividly, with the sun shining on my face and the wind suddenly stops. The gear becomes too easy to stay in. I shift and I suddenly hear a clear voice. I pulled the earbuds out because at first I thought it was part of the song I was listening to. The voice continues and it's in this clear, sort of almost calming, booming tones. Um, and it was make candy with essential oils.
Mm.
Um, Very familiar with essential oils with all the yoga I do and the teaching, and I use it for my own family. So it wasn't, an odd thing. So this phrase continues again, and I look over my left shoulder, and I kind of expected to see someone on my wheel, and there was no one. And I hear the voice again, make candy with essential oils. And there's no one on the path. And so I'm listening to the sound of my breath having changed from this heavy inhalations to normal conversational breathing. Um, it also seemed like the voice was becoming a little more crisp and clear. I really sort of in that moment felt like somebody's got to be there. So I look
Mhm.
again over my left shoulder and there's no one there. Um, so again, make candy using essential oils was said again. And um, this is how you can help your friend. And so there became this conversational, beautiful exchange of answers. And there was some questions that I had, and there was just this back and forth. And at the time, it just felt kind of normal, felt kind of like, oh, this is really cool. And it was really short.
Yeah.
Um, so I began asking in real time this conversation of, making candy with essential oils. I've never made candy. Um, and the voice continued to say, the pure essences of these essential oils is what's going to be helpful to help him and not just him, not just people with cancer. So anyway, it was really cool. He says, um, the voice was like, so much peace and just practice in your kitchen and teach your son. And he will embrace it and take your time. Keep your belief on what you already know is inside of you. And so as these really important feelings and emotions and words and all of this, I just had to follow my heart. I just had to. So as quickly and perfectly as this exchange happened, the wind picked up again, not so fierce like it was earlier. And I cycled home and I just kept replaying the conversation because I really didn't want to forget any part of it. So I was
Mm.
replaying it over my mind, and I had another, I don't know, mile and a half to 2 miles or so to home. And I just remember the moment I got in, my husband said, "How was your ride?" And I said, "I can't even describe it. All is well, but I can't even really describe it right now. It was amazing. It was amazing."
Mm.
And then he says, "Well, I'm going into a meeting. I'll talk to you about it after." And I was like, "Okay, perfect." So I go outside in the backyard where my son's waiting for me, and he's got a book in his hand and he's laying in the hammock, and we're homeschooling at this point. And so he says the same thing. "Hey, mom, how was your ride?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, honey, it was the most beautiful." And I really can't even find the words, but this is kind of what happened. And so I describe it all to him. And he's got the book open and he's like really excited about me reading this book to him. And he closes the book. He gets out of the hammock and he says, "Okay, well, let's go to Michael's. We're going to go and pick up a couple of something and we'll figure it out."
I love
And it
that.
was from that point on that, he and I worked in the kitchen and we made candy and we had lots and lots of failed batches. Um, but yeah, this is, and the blend part came from the end result at this point was to give to our friend, and the two different flavors all melted together because he'd left it in his car, and South Florida heat. And he got to work and he was feeling completely nauseated, couldn't have his breakfast. I guess this is days after days after days and just not
Mhm.
eating well. And so he's like, "Oh, I remember Tracy gave me some candy and it's in my glove box." Yes. So he tells me this later. He takes the candy out and it was all melted and kind of like, how when you make peanut brittle, it's all in one big sheet and you have to crack it,
Mhm.
or bark,
Yeah.
yogurt bark or something like that with nuts and cranberries and stuff. Well, it sort of was all like that. So he broke a piece off and he had it, and he texted me, later, and he says, "Thank you so much for the candy. The nausea completely lifted and I was able to eat and I feel so much better."
Mm.
And so, that was my experience. And, this practicing in the kitchen and getting it, getting it wrong and getting it where it would fail. And then there were times where I was like, "Oh my gosh, I think I've got something here." And just knowing that my responses to what was going on, my little boy was watching this and
Mhm.
seeing how I responded to what could have been deemed something as a failure, or could have been deemed something as a, hey, I think I've got something here, and get excited about it. I just really kept it like super even and inspiring, and let's indulge this one more time and see how we can make this work. Maybe it's the flavor that just doesn't come through, or maybe, and so together we really dove in, and it was one of my favorite seasons
Mm,
with my son. There are many, but this one in particular, and just seeing his big green eyes open up when he's like, oh my gosh, this is actually a hard candy now. Because at the beginning, it wasn't turning into too much of a hard candy. And it was amazing. It was like the best experience as a mom could have, just to see that eagerness to want to,
yeah.
you know, help his coach. So, yeah.
Now, how old was your son through that story? How old was he when he
So, um, I guess he would be about 11.
started? Okay.
Yeah, 10 or 11.
Well,
10. Yeah.
I love so many parts of that I made notes that I want to come back and talk to you about. What I do want to say is thank you so much for your vulnerability and thank you for sharing the full story because I too have had those moments where I look over my shoulder because I'm sure there's somebody talking to me. And I'm certain that many of our listeners are shaking their heads, going, yes, yes, I get that. And I had goosebumps as you were telling
Oh,
that part of the
thank
story. So
you.
thank you for your vulnerability in that because I know how many times I've wanted to say, no, I heard it. No, it wasn't voices. It heard it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and it is a lot in being able to be authentic and real about that. And so thank you for bringing that and thank you for being vulnerable.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and
It's
there
just
was
a little bit of emotion too, to realize, just how that how that started for me, based on truly just having that desire, um and I had asked, like, prior to all of this, I had asked, what am I meant to be doing here in this lifetime? You
mhm.
know, that's what was really, as I look back and I'm like, I truly asked, what am I meant to be doing here? I know it was being a mom for sure. That brought a few challenges my way. We started having kids a little bit late, and needed a little bit of intervention. And so grateful we stayed that course, because I know that that was my purpose too. And so, I get to have a few purposes, and I'm so grateful for this life experience, and to have this call,
Mhm.
to really feel like it's what I'm intended to do here. So,
Well, and I love one of my mentors who I've actually had on the podcast a couple of times, Liana Silver, said to me one time that it's a sacred assignment. And so
yeah.
I know having Kevin, my son, was absolutely my sacred assignment. And I've recently become empty nest. So I'm going through the place of, okay, what's my next sacred assignment? Because
Yes.
sometimes I think when we say our purpose, we get like too much pressure on it and it's one big thing and blah, blah, blah. So
Right.
I love the term sacred assignment because we can have lots of assignments and we can have multiple assignments at the same time in life and just kind of going through that sacred assignment. Uh, one of the things that I loved, I don't even know which part to start at, but when you said your desire, desire is a magical force. It's a magical energy that inspires us and keeps us going. And I would love to hear a little bit more because I know in your questionnaire you said you try to keep a positive attitude. And when you're stuck, you shake it off with mantras, food, a walk, and early to bed. And I'd love to talk a little bit more about those challenges. And before we do that, I want to highlight that you said every time that you either failed, questioned, or thought, hey, I've got something, you remembered your son was watching you. And how are you
Mhm.
going to respond to that? Because I know that, and it's funny, Kevin was about 11 when I got really aware of how I was dealing with situations. and I was teaching him how to do it himself later. And Kevin's now 23, and I'm seeing the fruit of my labors
Yeah.
because
Yes.
he's so much better. And he'll handle something and he'll walk out of the house or walk out of the room. And Matthew looks at me and says, "We raised a really good human. Like he's turned out really good."
Yeah.
Um, so I think that that's a really neat. I just it's kind of namasteing my soul, namasteing to yours, that I honor that
No.
thought for you, because it is one of the things I think being aware that Kevin was watching me made me a really good human, not just him a good human.
Yes. And I was going to add that too, because, we tend to have those mirroring moments, and not just with our
Mhm.
children, but with our loved ones that see us in our raw state, in our glory, in our part where we're struggling with something and we want to move through it, and our partners sometimes mirror some of that. And so I was just going to say that, he saw that in you too, and mirroring some of that.
Absolutely. I just had to wipe a tear off my face.
Oh,
Because also, I mean, this is going to air later, but Kevin in the last month has moved into his permanent, I mean, he's 23, so I can't call it his forever home, but his for a long
right.
time home. And he got engaged.
Oh
So
gosh, that's
yeah,
so great.
well, we're excited for him. We love her. They've been dating for 7 years. It was the next step in life.
Yes.
But
Oh,
we're also in that, like, okay, we raised a good person. He's doing good things in life. Like, we're giving ourselves some hurrah.
yes,
And at the
yes.
same time, like, okay, he's not
Oh,
coming home again. Like,
no.
this is it.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
understand that. Our daughter goes to University of South Florida, and she'll be 21 this year and graduating. And it was, when she went off to college, even though she was at the time only a 4-hour drive away, it felt like she was gone forever. And then she's
Hmm.
not going to be coming home. And I had sort of this emptiness sort of feeling. But just because, she and I are really close, and
Hmm.
and I can truly understand how you're feeling, because I think my son, he's 17 now. He's already talking about when he's 18, he's moving out.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, okay, we'll see how that unfolds. I'm excited for you, but yeah, he's he's got a little bit like me in him, where he's gets this idea and he's going to go for it, and all in. So when he says things, I believe him.
I love that.
So yeah.
Well, and that's really an energy that we need as entrepreneurs, because being a solopreneur, having a family business, it is an emotional roller coaster.
Oh yes.
It is, I mean, not to mention all the limiting beliefs of being seen. Do I have worthiness of what I want to share? All those things that we have to do. We also then put the pressure on, is my idea beneficial to people? Is it something that's gonna, being souls like you and I that are spiritual souls, there's those moments of, is this assignment sacred? Is this
Yes.
assignment going to make a difference in the world?
Hmm.
And an assignment making the difference in the world is running an authentic body care, car repair place. It can be having a heating and air company because you're charging fair prices, you've got good quality. So when I
Hmm.
say sacred assignment, it doesn't have to be making a product line that makes a difference for cancer patients or having a spiritual business. Like, anything we do, carrying that level of authenticity, that level of genuineness, that level of making a difference is important. And
Absolutely.
it's a lot of pressure.
Yes. Yes. Because then you see the other side of how businesses are run, for the simple part of greed and
Hmm.
money. Sometimes those decisions can occur, in that side. And you have us that are, our sole assignment. And I'll just give the candy freely to those that are, going through treatment, and it's no questions asked, and it's beautiful, and
Yeah.
it's lovely, and it's exactly what I'm meant to be doing. And
Yeah.
I know it in my heart space. I
And
just know it.
that's what gets us through the moments of the roller coaster
Yeah,
tips.
totally. The answering, our live chat feature we offer on our site at, 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night. It's the packaging of candy when I get an order in, really, really the cutoff, between USPS closing and just, running over there. And you're right. It's all the stuff that you do because you have to,
Yeah.
but you can look at it as a have to, or look at it as, I'm being given this beautiful opportunity to do this, and this, all the other stuff is part of it. And yeah, you just keep moving forward. Just keep swimming, as they say.
Well, and I love, like, let's go down this avenue because I love to keep the podcast um, real. And I like to show the tools that we use through this. So I
Sure.
know for Matthew and I'm very spiritual. I love to meditate. I walk outside. I get grounded. Matthew gets locked in the won't get up from his desk for 5 hours because he's working on something. And when he hears this, he'll laugh. He's overcomplicating it. Often I have to just go, stop. You're making this harder than it needs to be. But, we have these tools when we get locked in business that bring us back to spirituality. And sometimes I can go an hour and remember I have the tool and I can use it. And other times I can go 8 days and forgetting I have the tools. So let's
Yeah.
talk about, I love that you said, you use mantras, food, a walk, and early to bed. Let's talk about how to stay grounded, to stay centered and purposeful in a business where you consider it your sacred assignment, your sole purpose, and allowing it to be what supports your family. Because, like, we can all honor these sacred assignments. And what the universe says is, you do your part, I'll do my part. So the
Hmm.
universe is saying, you do the sacred assignment, and I'll provide for you because I don't want you to live in a bad place. I want you on your high flying disc so that you can keep your sacred assignment. So that's where
Yeah.
that harmony, sometimes we remember to use our tools. And whether it's 5 hours, 5 days, or 5 months, coming back to those tools to remember to stay purposeful.
You're absolutely right. That is exactly, I think, how this ebb and flow occurs. And it's funny when, after the fifth day of feeling ick for whatever reason, it's like, oh, all of a sudden there's this like wake up period of going, okay, let's just get down to it. And
Mhm.
then back I go to my deeper meditation and my deeper yoga practice. And I start carrying crystals in my pocket, and I start really using this beautiful blend a friend made me for, essential oils that I can, rub on my skin that's close to me, being able to breathe it in.
Mhm.
And then I'm reminded, oh, yes, all is right in the world again. And
Mhm.
then all of a sudden, I don't know, the trees are greener, the sky is bluer.
Mhm.
The harmony in my family just seems to be, all encompassing. And, and I think that's just, for us to see contrast,
Yes.
right?
Contrast. Law of attraction, contrast.
Yeah. And to see,
Yeah.
okay, this hasn't been working. And then I, put on the Abraham Hicks podcast, or sorry, YouTube video, and I'll
Oh my
listen to it.
gosh.
And
We listen to one of those every morning while we drink our morning shakes. You and I are so kindred.
it's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll get into that zone, and then yeah, when I'm sort of in that sort of feeling of ick, and a lot of times it could just be, I'm on the road, I'm not eating correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Being vegetarian is a challenge being on the road. There aren't a lot of
Oh, yeah.
options when you stop at a station to fill up your tank. So
Yes.
there's some pre-planning that needs to take place. And, you know, um, and so there are natural moments where we just don't, have our stuff together sometimes, and it's okay. It's that we don't stay with it very long, and
Hmm.
we find our way and we find our tools and we fill up the gas tank. And for me, it's sleep.
Hmm.
Um, it's also when I start feeling a little on that, I'll just get out the the greens, and I'll make a beautiful juice with spinach and celery and cucumber and ginger and turmeric. And next thing I know, I'm drinking this down and I can literally feel the cells just opening up and going, okay, I got you. You can keep going. So,
Yeah, I love that. And I love everything you said. I'm not vegetarian, but I am gluten-free. So I don't traveling takes a
yeah.
lot of
Hard.
pre-planning to make sure we can
Yes.
eat right. I
Yeah.
love my green juices, although I throw beets in it. So
Oh,
my
lovely
green
too.
juice turns red.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really, really red.
Oh, that's great.
Let me jump back for a second just because we said something about Abraham Hicks for anybody who's listening and
Yes.
doesn't
Yes.
know. Abraham Hicks, Law of Attraction. One of my friends introduced it to me. Does these 15-minute blips on YouTube that are master gems. And that's how we start our mornings with it because there's always, and you can go to our channel and find the video that works for you. And we used to do that, but now that's all I listen to on my YouTube on my phone. So I open it, and whatever one pops up first is the message
Yes.
from the universe that day. And
Yes.
and I will say for anybody who's ever listened, there's always a short commercial about 8 minutes in. The first month that we listened to it, we thought that was the end. And there's a whole other section after the commercial. So
Yes.
just to say,
Yeah.
um, and I love that you talk about ways to fill up our tanks again because it matters how we treat our souls. And at the same time, the contrast is we're spirit and we're human. And we're
Hmm.
here to be human, and spirit's here to guide us through it. So, talking to a dear friend of mine who's going through some struggles right now earlier this week, she was kind of beating herself up because she's off her path and she knows she's off it, but
Yep.
situation, she can't be on it right now. And I told her, you're human. Like, you're
Yeah.
here to experience human things, and you know that you want to be in a spiritual place, and you'll get back there because you have that desire. So I
Yes.
offer that to listeners that maybe you need to hear it now, maybe in 6 weeks you'll remember. We all have these human moments, and that's what we're here for. If we weren't supposed to have human moments, we'd still be spirit. We wouldn't be on earth in human form. Um, and there is that contrast, Abraham, I was listening to Abraham's interview with Wayne Dyer this week, and it was from 2013. And I don't remember what Wayne asked her, but Abraham's answer was, you don't always know what you want until you know what you don't want.
Yes.
And that's part of the contrast is knowing I don't want to be here. I want to be there. And if you're
Yeah.
always there, then you don't know to have that gratitude and that appreciation for it.
Of course. Of course. And just a little sideline to that, that's how I attracted my husband to come into my life.
Mm.
Was yeah, I had a friend of mine who introduced me to Wayne Dyer and Abraham Hicks, and I was coming out of a I call him my starter husband. I was coming out of that. Um, and I came to realize this was Spirit's way of directing me from Ontario to Calgary, from Toronto to Calgary, because that's where I was meant to meet my husband now. And so I was tasked with, I want you to write down 100 things of what you would like in a mate.
Mm.
And I thought, oh, easy breezy. She goes, you need to write 100 things down on this list, on this piece of paper. And she says, you're going to get to a point where you're all of a sudden, you'll write out all like the most important things, and that'll be first and foremost and a third of the page. And then as you get towards the bottom, that's when the real stuff shows up for you,
Mm.
the real important things. And so I wrote out this list and I read it over and I used it as part of my meditation tool. for about, I don't know, I would say about 2 or 3 months, just getting really dialed into focusing on more on the bottom third of what I wrote. Because the top third filled,
Mhm.
I want someone to sit on the deck and drink coffee with, and someone to share, a beautiful glass of red wine if we travel in Italy, like kind of fluff stuff like that. I mean, yes, it's important, but when you get to the bottom third, that's when, there's a lot of the real meat of it
Yeah.
all comes through. So anyway, so Dean, my husband, he and I met um, very much in a place where we both were not meant to be there. And it was at the Westin Hotel in Calgary. And he had his own business at the time. I was working for the Westin, and we weren't supposed to be working on that same day.
Mm.
And it turned out I was called in for a shift, begged and pleaded, will you please come in? Everybody's called off because it was, a Halloween party the night before, and now it's the next day. And his same thing. He was he was running his own DJ company, and the same thing. He had all of his staff tired from the night before, and they called in, and so he's showed up at the Westin, and that's where we were meeting, and we met for the very first time, and it was like, oh my gosh, I totally knew that I was supposed to be here.
Mhm.
And so later, several months later, um, I found the list in my drawer of my nightstand, and I looked over it. And I guess we were about 7 or 8 months in or something in our relationship. And I was going, check, check, check. And I was like running through the things on the list,
Mhm.
recognizing Soul and Dean's um, personality and the way he, loved life and all of these things that I had written on this 100 things. And so, being that he's a little more analytical than I am, he's like, okay, so Tracy, what's the percentage that I meet of the list?
I love that.
So yeah, so I mean that's kind of how he and I met, and that too is such a sacred and special season of my life that
Mhm.
happened too. So
I love that. Well, and he now, because I know when I started ordering from you guys, he was the front person that I spoke with. So I
yeah,
love that you guys are in business together because as we talked about, you and I, before we started the podcast, there's a lot of women in businesses, and that's important. And it's a great feature to look for. What's often not spoken about is there's that wonderful partner support behind you that
absolutely.
keeps you going and picks you up. And I know for me, Matthew and I'm low, he picks me up, he's low. That was actually one of our wedding vows is
Ah,
that I said to him, on your down days, I will prop you up. On your good days, I will celebrate you. Um,
love that.
because that's really important in thinking about family businesses, not just who owns the business, but knowing there's that family energy of love and support behind it gives it so much more momentum.
Yes, absolutely. And I will often say, um, Dean can do all of the things that I either can't or don't have the wheelhouse to,
Mm-hmm.
or that I'm not good at. And I do all of the things that he's not comfortable with either. And so I think from that standpoint, we really do have a very um, cohesive and blended. And, there are times where he'll come into my lane and I'll go into his lane, and we both recognize, oh, hold on a second. All right, I'll
Mhm.
stay in my lane.
Yeah.
So, yes, it's, and I don't think all partners can work together, but I know that when you have found that you can, it's really important to cherish that and nurture that, um, and certainly spend time alone. That is another piece of advice that I would, just for those that are entertaining the idea of starting a business and working with your significant other, it is really important to have your alone time and to continue to bring forth all of the beauty and the compassion, and the creativity and all of the things that you bring to your business. So
Yeah. I
yeah.
love that. And I second all of that. Matthew and I make the joke that our house is long enough that we can work on opposite ends of it. But, we eat lunch together, we eat breakfast together, we take the dogs for a walk at lunchtime every day. And now that our son's not here, it's just us. And
Yes.
it's a true testament to that that connection that you can have with your spouse. And I too call my first husband my starter husband. I have my starter husband and my forever husband.
Oh,
Matthew's my forever husband. Um, but there's no way I could have done it with him, with my
yeah.
starter husband.
Yeah. Oh,
There's definitely a different level of love and compassion that you can have. Um, and there's a level of patience.
yes. Yes,
For both of us,
absolutely.
and I will be the first, and I've said it on other podcasts. Sometimes I make Matthew crazy. I get it. But that's that passion that burns inside of us. And I think it's a wonderful thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
Tracy, thank you so much for the conversation. I love always seeing where the conversation will go. And I love knowing the kindredness, talking about Abraham and all the different things that we have found in the conversation today. So I'm absolutely certain that the listeners are shaking their heads, going, yes, I'm on my high flying disc too.
Oh, that's
Uh,
great.
so thank you so much for the conversation. And I know that we have many of your products available on our website, myhappylifebox.com. We've got the digestive blend, the uplifting blend, the slumber blend, wellness blend. We have the curbs, and you've got many other wonderful blends. So I invite people to either check out My Happy Life box under Healthy Fare, or they can find you at essentialcandy.com and really check out your brand and know a little bit more about your story. One of the things I love about your business is that for every bag sold, you donate a bag to cancer patients, which you kind of mentioned in the beginning, but didn't really. So it's a wonderful company to support. And we are honored to be able to support you, thrilled to have found you, and really are excited just to continue watching you grow and the difference you make in the world.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. I really appreciate all of that. You're going to make me feel crying now too with some tears. I really appreciate your support as well. And, it's, it's, I just know it in my heart. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. So, and I love too that for those individuals that, have that desire to help other people, they get to partake in that when they purchase something for themselves too. So
Mhm. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, thank you so much, Tracy, for being here. And I look forward to continuing connecting with you.
sounds great. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Chris. Take care.
Thanks for listening to today's podcast. I hope that our conversation and Tracy's story has really helped inspire you. And if you're going through that entrepreneurial roller coaster, no, you are not alone. We are in it with you, friend. You can check out more of Tracy's Candies on our website. And while you're there, subscribe to our newsletter so that we can stay in touch and you'll hear all about the other inspiring companies that we're carrying in our product line. Thanks for joining us.